my masterpiece, there is something about you that the world has not fully seen yet. Not because it is hidden by accident, not because something went wrong along the way, but because the fullness of who I made you to be is still unfolding, still pressing outward from the inside, still emerging like a structure whose final form has not yet been revealed to the passers-by who have only glimpsed it through the scaffolding. You have been walking around with a weight you cannot quite name, a sense that there is more to you than what you have been able to express, a quiet, persistent knowing that the version of yourself that people encounter every day is only a fraction of what exists beneath the surface, beneath the performance, beneath the careful editing you have learned to do on yourself in order to fit the spaces others have assigned to you. That feeling is not imagination. It is not wishful thinking, is not the kind of self-flattery that a soul conjures up in moments of insecurity to compensate for a deeper sense of failure. It is something much more real than that. It is recognition, the deep part of you recognizing something true about the blueprint, the way a piece of a puzzle that has been held separately finally begins to feel the pull of the shape it was made to complete. The real you is becoming visible, not louder, not more impressive, more true. Before I laid the foundations of the world, before the stars were positioned in their courses and the seas were given their boundaries, I sat with intention over you. Not in the general sense in which a creator might cast a wide plan across everything that exists. Precisely, particularly the way a craftsman sits with a single piece of material and considers what it has the capacity to become, what its particular grain and density and character suggest about the form it can best take, what exact use it is suited for that nothing else in the workshop is equally suited for. I sat with the idea of you, and I was not hurried. I was not making something ordinary. I was making something that would matter in ways that no one would be able to fully catalog. There is a word that matters here. Before the circumstances of your birth shaped you. Before the environment you grew up in began to form you. Before the people who had authority over your early years impressed their own understanding and limitations and expectations onto you. Before all of that, I already knew you. I already had in mind what I was building. The things that were added to you by the world were additions to something that was already there. They shaped the expression of the blueprint, sometimes helpfully and sometimes not, but they did not determine the pattern. The design preceded them. It was not dependent on them. It will not be limited by them. What I placed in you before you were born is not negated by what the world placed in you afterward. The original remains. It has always remained. And it is what I am pointing toward when I speak about who you are. Every detail was chosen, the particular way your mind links ideas together. Distinct quality of your attention when something captures your genuine interest. The precise way you read a room when you enter it. The depth of your capacity for care. The unique shape of your humor. The particular things that break your heart. The particular things that make you come alive. None of these were defaults. None were the result of random combination or developmental accident. Each trait I placed in you was placed because it was needed. Because without it, something I am building through you would be structurally compromised. You are not a rough draft of a better version that I have not gotten around to completing. You are the finished composition still growing into the fullness of itself, still expanding into the space I planned for it. Consider what it means to be built with this kind of attention. An architect who is planning a significant structure does not accidentally include a room or carelessly position a load-bearing wall. Every decision reflects a calculation. The angle of a staircase is deliberate. The height of a ceiling is intentional. The placement of a window is chosen for a reason that serves the function of the whole. Nothing in a building that was crafted by someone who knew what they were doing is arbitrary. Everything is there because it belongs there. When I composed the architecture of who you are, I was not improvising. I was executing a plan that I had conceived with full knowledge of what it would need to accomplish. And every element of the blueprint serves that purpose. What you carry inside you is not a collection of random characteristics assembled without foresight. It is an intentional kit, a set of capacities assembled to meet particular needs that exist in distinct places in the exact world that is yours. Your sensitivity is not a weakness to be apologized for or managed into submission. It is precision instrumentation, the kind of instrument that can detect things blunder tools would miss entirely. Your curiosity is not a distraction from more serious work. It is a built-in search mechanism, crafted to locate things that need to be found, to notice what others move past without pausing, to pursue questions in directions that yield answers the more efficient and incurious would never uncover. Your persistence is not stubbornness dressed up in better language. It is the load-bearing wall of everything I am building through you. Remove it, and the structure is compromised. Every quality you have spent years second-guessing, every characteristic you have tried to moderate or suppress or reshape, because it did not fit the expectations of the environments you have moved through, was placed in you because it was necessary, because without it, the particular work that only you can do would lack an essential component. You have been trying to renovate the building without understanding what the building was intended for. You have been treating the load-bearing walls as though they were decorative and wondering why the structure keeps feeling unstable. The instability is not in the design. The instability comes from the effort to be something other than the intended thing. There is a particular joy I carry when I think about you. Let me be precise about what I mean by that, because it is not the general warmth I hold for everything I have made, though that warmth is real, and it extends to every corner of creation. What I am describing is something more particular than that. The particular delight of a maker who has poured genuine attention into a piece of work, and when the work is finished looks at what has been produced and knows that it came out exactly right. Not perfect, in every superficial sense, right? Suited, fitted precisely for the purpose that was in mind when the work began. That is the quality of delight I have about you. You came out exactly right for what I made you for. When the last detail of who you are was set in place before you drew your first breath in the world, there was a moment of satisfaction. Rather than pride in the self-congratulatory sense, it was satisfaction in the way a builder who has solved a difficult structural problem feels when the solution proves itself sound. You were a difficult and beautiful intention to execute. The particular combination of qualities I put in you, the way they interact and reinforce and sometimes create tension with each other, that is not an accident. That is a sophisticated piece of engineering. And the result was exactly what I was aiming for. You have perhaps spent long stretches of time wishing you were different, wishing you were more like someone else whose gifts seem more obvious, more recognized, more rewarded by the environments you have both moved through, wishing you were more articulate or more at ease in large groups, or more naturally confident or more organized or more spontaneous or more something other than what you naturally and essentially are. And I understand the impulse behind that wish. The world has a way of signaling, often loudly and repeatedly, that certain kinds of people are more valuable than others, that certain traits earn more recognition, more reward, more room in the conversation. And when the traits that are celebrated are not yours, it is very easy to begin to believe that yours are lesser. But what the world rewards and what I planned are not always the same thing. Often they are not even close to the same thing. What I crafted in you was not built for the particular reward systems that human culture has arranged. It was built to serve needs that those reward systems often fail to recognize, to reach places that applause does not penetrate, to do work that does not make headlines but changes lives nonetheless. The value of a gift is not measured by its visibility. It is measured by its function. And your particular gifts are functioning even now, even in seasons when they feel invisible to you and unremarked upon by anyone else. So let me speak plainly about the blueprint. Let me tell you what I see when I look at the architecture of who you are, not with the critical eye of someone cataloging deficiencies, not with the disappointed assessment of someone who expected something different and is trying to make peace with what they got, with the clear, satisfied eyes of the one who drew the plans in the first place and knows them by heart. I see the original blueprint, the structure I intended, the child I made before the world had the opportunity to begin the slow work of convincing you that you were a lesser version of something better. What I see is not the edited version of you. It is not the version you present at work or at family gatherings or in the carefully curated way you move through situations where you know you are being assessed. Beyond the version that has learned which parts of yourself are safe to show and which need to remain carefully managed, what I see is the full version, the version that exists underneath all the management, the one that occasionally surfaces when you are completely at ease, when you forget to perform, when you are so genuinely engaged in something that the monitoring falls away, and what is left is just you functioning as the individual you actually are. That version is the intended one. That version is what I had. In mind, that is the soul worth being completely and without the exhausting performance of being someone more acceptable. I want you to notice something about the moments when that version of you emerges. Notice what happens to the people around you when it does. When you stop performing and start being something and the room changes, it is not because you have become impressive. It is because you have become real. And real in a world that is saturated with performance is disarming. People lean toward it. They do not always know why. They just know that something shifted when you stopped managing yourself and started simply being present. What they are responding to is the pattern, the actual thing I built, making itself available for a moment without the usual filtering. And it reaches people in ways that the filtered version cannot, because people can feel the difference between someone who is performing and someone who is present even when they cannot articulate what they are feeling. The blueprint is still intact underneath everything that has happened to you, under the layers of disappointment and self-doubt and accommodation and careful management of expectations. The architecture I put in you is still sound, still structurally valid, still capable of being fully inhabited. The work now is not renovation. Instead of improvement in the direction of something different, the work is occupation, taking up full residence in the individual you already are, the soul you were already made to be, and allowing that one to function fully in the life that surrounds you. This is why these words are reaching you in this particular season. It is not because everything is already in order, and it is not because the journey has been easy or the destination is already visible, but because something in you is ready to hear it, ready to look at the blueprint clearly, perhaps for the first time without the overlay of other people's expectations or your own accumulated self-criticism. The moment for this kind of seeing has arrived, and what you see when you look without that overlay is a blueprint that is worthy of your full occupancy, a human being worth becoming completely and without reservation. I want you to hold that truth firmly before we go further. You were made on purpose. Every detail of who you are was placed there with intention and care. The pattern is active, the calling is real, and the fullness of what I made you to be is not waiting for you somewhere in a future that requires you to first become someone else. It is available to you now. In the life you are already living, in the person you already are. What is emerging in you in this season is not a new you, it is the full you. And what I feel as I watch that emergence is the deep pleasure of a maker watching a structure finally fully come into use. Let me say one more thing about the design before we move forward, about what the plan is not asking from you. It is not asking you to have it all figured out. It is not asking you to have resolved every question about your direction or arrived at perfect clarity about what the next season holds or produced sufficient evidence that the gifts are real and the calling is genuine. It is not asking you to be further along than you are or to have made better use of the time you have had. The design works with what is present with the individual as they actually are in the season they are actually in, with the understanding they actually have. It does not require an idealized version of you to become operative. It requires the actual one who is here, the one who is here in this moment, carrying what you carry, having been through what you have been through. That version is enough, not as a consolation, as an intention from the beginning. That is the version the blueprint was built for. So when you encounter the gap between who you are and who you think you need to be before you are finally ready to step into the calling, close the gap by revising the requirement rather than the person. The requirement that you need to be further along, more sorted, more impressive, more certain before the calling can. Function is not from me. It is from the accumulated pressure of a world that measures people by those standards. My standard is different. My standard is faithfulness with what is present. And faithfulness with what is present is available to you right now exactly as you are. You have lived long enough to have a history, and that history has weight to it. Layers accumulated over years of living. Seasons that were luminous with possibility and seasons that were so dark you could not find the edges of them. Chapters you look back on with genuine gratitude, and chapters you would excise from the record if the editing were available. Choices that bore real fruit and choices that cost you things you are still paying for in ways you may not fully recognize. Relationships that built you and relationships that broke something in you that took years to begin to repair. I have been present through all of it, rather than watching from the safe distance of an observer who maintains clean hands by staying out of the mess. I was embedded in it with you, feeling the particular weight of your grief when it was at its heaviest, knowing the sting of your failures from the inside because I was never outside of what you were going through. Sitting with you in the ache of disappointments that came without warning and took longer to absorb than you had anticipated. Some moments were not comfortable. Some chapters were not easy to accompany you through, but I was there every moment. I was never evaluating from a distance whether your performance qualified you for continued support. Present because my presence is not contingent on your performance. What you may not have fully realized is what I was doing in those difficult seasons. It was never passive observation, and it was never patient waiting for you to get through it so we could resume the real work. It was active engagement. The kind of work that a skilled builder does when the conditions are difficult and the raw material needs to be shaped by processes that are not always pleasant. I was working with the material of your experience, including the hard and unwanted parts to produce something that could not have been produced without them. The things that broke you also shaped you. Consider that for a moment without deflecting from it. The loss that hollowed you out also created capacity. The space where the thing you lost used to be is now available for something else. The hollowing was not only damage, it was also the creation of a container. The waiting that felt unbearable. The seasons when everything seemed suspended and nothing seemed to be moving was from my vantage point. Preparation, deliberate, purposeful preparation for something that required a particular kind of readiness that only that precise waiting could produce. It was never punishment and it was never negligence. It was preparation. Think about what happens when a building is being constructed in earnest. There is a period, often a substantial period, when the most important work is entirely invisible to anyone passing by the site. The foundation is being laid. This is the most critical phase of the entire project. The quality of what will eventually stand depends entirely on the quality of what is being done underground where no one can see it and nothing visible is happening. An observer who does not understand construction might conclude that the project has stalled, that nothing is being accomplished, that the investment has yielded nothing. But the builder knows that everything is happening. The most important everything. Your difficult seasons were that foundation work, the excavation that had to the structure, the removal of what could not support what I intended to build through you. The things that were cleared away from your life were not stolen from you. They were cleared. Some of them were things that felt essential, things you had built significant portions of your identity around, and losing them felt like losing yourself. But the clearing was necessary. What remained after it, the core of who you are, the things that did not collapse when the pressure was applied. Those things are the load-bearing structure. Those are the parts I was always building on. Your difficult seasons also revealed something that easier seasons could not have shown me or shown you. They revealed the architecture. The places in you that held under sustained pressure are the load-bearing places. The places where you bent nearly to the point of breaking, but did not break reveal the resilience I built into the architecture. The cracks that formed and then healed show me where the material was stressed and how it recovered. A building that has never been tested by weather tells an engineer much less than a building that has survived seasons of it. I know you in a way now after what you have been through that I could only know you by having walked through it with you. And what I know is this: you are structurally more sound than you understand yourself to be. The capacity that was built in those seasons is not only resilience, though resilience is part of it, and it is not a small thing. It is also understanding, the particular quality of knowing that can only be produced by having been through something, by having navigated it from the inside rather than observed it from a safe distance. There is a kind of wisdom that can be taught, and a kind of wisdom that can only be lived. The lived kind is the rarer and more valuable kind. It is the kind that allows a soul to speak with genuine authority into someone else's experience, not because they read about it or theorized about it or empathized with it from the outside, but because they know it. They were there, they survived it. They came out the other side of it still holding the things that mattered. You have that kind of knowing now about particular things, particular kinds of pain, particular kinds of confusion or loss or waiting or failure. And that knowing is not incidental to the blueprint. It is integral to it. Because part of what I built you to do involves being present with people and places that require someone who has actually been there. The one who comes to someone in their darkest moment with polished words and a cheerful manner and no first-hand knowledge of what that darkness feels like is offering a different thing than the individual who can sit down in the darkness with them and not be rattled by it because they have been there themselves. You can be the second kind of soul in precise ways in distinct situations with particular people. You already are. And here is something I want you to see about the process of being shaped by difficult seasons. It does not happen automatically. Two people can go through identical circumstances and come out the other side carrying completely different things. One comes out bitter and closed. Another comes out deeper and more capable of genuine compassion. The difference is not in the severity of what they experienced. It is in what they chose to do with the experience as it was happening. Whether they allowed it to teach them or only to wound them. Whether they kept some part of themselves oriented toward growth even in the middle of pain. Whether they held on to the things that mattered when the pressure was at its strongest, you held on. Perhaps not perfectly and certainly not without moments of letting go and having to pick things back up again. But the essential orientation, the part of you that keeps pressing forward and keeps caring and keeps showing up even when you're not sure what for that held. And what held in you through the difficult seasons has become part of your foundation in a way that cannot be produced by anything less demanding than what you went through. A foundation is tested by weight. Yours held weight. That is not nothing. That is the thing that everything else stands on. This is part of what I was building in the difficult seasons. Beyond character, though, character was absolutely being built. It was context. The particular context that positions an individual to reach places and people that comfort and ease cannot reach. Your history, including the parts of it that you would not have chosen, is part of your equipment. The particular path you have walked has placed you near things that I type Amen if you believe in God.